an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood. Episode 53, Flame of Vengeance. In this episode, Roy comes face to face with the murderer of Hughes. And Envy makes some choices. Envy isn't thinking super clearly here. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. If you're out there, Max, how are you doing? And thank you. So, guys, I just have to talk about this out of the gate because I did also mention it in the little blurb when I posted the link to this crowdcast. But you guys know that I have said before, I can't understand being unwilling to strike someone just because they look like a loved one when you know for a fact that they are not your loved one because they transformed right the fuck in front of you. And everybody has been all, oh God, but it's my wife. And I'm like, what? Why? You know it's not, though. And then finally, we have Envy turn into Hughes for a second and be just like is so confident. You're going to want to hit me, but you can't because... And Roy is like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of your tongue melting again. And I was so relieved. I don't like Mustang, and you guys know this. It's not anything even in particular. He just irritates me a little bit. But on this, we are heartily of one mind. And it was so great to see somebody who isn't affected by this the way that practically everybody seems to be in all of like these different fictions that I follow that employ a shape-changing character. Everybody, it's like they're fucking kryptonite the minute that they turn into somebody they know. And I'm just like, but you know that's not who they are, though. You have actual proof and watched them take on their appearance. What are you doing? And I am very chagrined at the fact that the first person I've seen to react the way I think I would react is one of the people that I have liked the least in the series so far. I don't know what to say, and I take back nothing that I said about Roy Mustang. I meant every word. I'm just relieved that it isn't fucking Hempstool, because if he was the only one who reacted in what I think is a more rational way, I don't know what I would do. I don't think I'm coming back from that. I think I would just sort of pretend it never happened and not talk about it at all. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about it out of the gate because I have been waiting for someone to respond this way and have been consistently surprised at how much how effective this always seems to be. And getting to watch Envy be that fucking cocky, striding out with this like shit-eating grin like, yeah, you're gonna wish you could. Nope. Haha. You've met your match finally. Maybe. Probably. B. Moore says, who hasn't wanted a guilt-free opportunity to incinerate a family member every once in a while? B. Moore, I'm not going to touch that one. That feels like something for you. But I need to remind you that Hughes isn't family. So I don't know. I just feel like maybe that was a little bit of a Freudian slip there. Damien says, yeah, this episode shows that what Roy's really capable of if he really wanted to go off. Yeah. And, well, I'll get there. Okay. I'm about to try and, like, start from the middle like I fucking do. Let's start from the start. What do you think, guys? I know it's quite a concept, and I'm not super familiar with it myself, but we'll just see how it goes. So, the episode begins with some guy, some rando, running into like a little diner. and yelling to this dude, turn the radio on, the like local station. And he's very urgent, and he's just like, come on, do it before they turn it off. And this guy who's behind he's like a chef, I guess, is very resistant. He says something like, what? Why? There's never anything good on that station. And I'm like, yo, if some random man comes running in off the street and tells you urgently to turn on the radio, just trust that he has his reasons. There's no need for you to just fight him on this. So the guy convinces him. Before the military shuts down the broadcast, come on. And he tunes in. Everybody's gathered around the counter. And it turns out that there is an interviewer on the radio. And he is interviewing the Führer's wife and getting a first-hand account of not only her abduction. That's really like, her abduction is framed as a rescuing of her life, you know? But also the fact that apparently they were ready to kill her. They're being very pointed about how Roy is the good guy and the rest of the military is a bad guy. And they are, you know, this is a coup. And what I found so remarkable here is how much my mind has shifted over the past like 10 years or so. This method of getting the word out about what's really going on would have worked it would have worked for me flawlessly a decade or decade and a half ago. All right, we're putting it out there. All of this is absolutely like, you know, they're being very direct, letting the public know. Everybody can make their own decisions about what's happening. But now that I have sat through the 2016 election and the Sandy Hook conspiracy theories and the weird Hillary Clinton pizzeria, like, you guys know what I'm talking about. The idea that we could just have a radio interview with a woman who says that she's the Führer's wife and that all of this is happening, and that everybody would believe it and trust that was really happening, and it all happened the way she said, is laughable. And this is not a criticism of the writing. This is a criticism of human beings today, just to be clear. And I say this, like, when I say human beings today, I think it's a very healthy thing to have skepticism of your government and its intentions. But most of the conspiracy theories that you see in the right wing today are about how minority groups are the ones that are secretly in control of things and secretly, like, trying to, you know, push their agenda. And that's the part that's always hilarious to me, because as we know, it's the fucking status quo that's winning all the time. And any ground that is gained by any minority is done in fits and spurts and several steps back and then a few forward. And so the kinds of skepticism that we should have about our government are not the kind that those types of conspiracy theorists tend to hold. They are certain that the government is lying to us, but they also believe that we should definitely, like, just do what cops tell us, etc. And it's really interesting to see that cognitive dissonance happen, and people aren't really putting together how conflicting it is to say, well, if you just respect the military, but also definitely stockpile guns because they're going to come and take them from you, kind of thing. It's like, well, but wait. So this scene where everybody hears it and takes it completely at face value, she's not even on camera. This could be anybody. I don't know how familiar they are with her voice, but they don't respond as if it's her voice they recognize. They respond as if they are they're responding to the announcer saying, Mrs. Bradley. And all of them are like, wait, the Mrs. Bradley? And they go from there. So there's no real reason to believe any of what they're hearing, except for the evidence in front of their eyes of the chaos. But that could be explained in a number of ways, you know? So there was a part of me in this scene that felt so wistful, because I remember when I used to think that all you had to do was put somebody on blast, let everybody know about what they're up to, their corruption, the deals they've been pulling. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. You know, like, I thought for sure grab him by the pussy was going to be the end of President Trump's campaign. And it did nothing. It did nothing. People don't care. And to see this universe where immediately they believe and they care, I just wanted so bad for this to be real. Can you guys imagine? What if everybody just believed the CDC? Like, just picture what America would have been like if everyone just trusted that COVID was real right out of the gate. Just never mind even about the vaccines. People didn't even believe COVID was real. What a wonderful world this could be. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's just really a moment, y'all. I don't know what it's going to take. We all know so much more. And we still haven't really done anything substantial about it. And I include myself in that. I'm not trying to like throw shade at anybody. There are plenty of people who are out there protesting and stuff. But you know what I'm saying? Like, protests are all well and good when there's like a real objective, but then there comes a point where it's like, well, we're just yelling, hoping somebody's going to listen. We need to do more, and we have the ability to do more, and we have the numbers and power to like influence, but we aren't. And I really do wonder sometimes, what will it take for us to stop our normal lives and go and fight for a thing? And again, I include myself in that because I'm sitting here on a podcast. I'm not out here fighting, you know? Anyway, I'm sorry to totally like diverge from the point. I just had to mention it because it was so striking to me how quickly and how easy it was to get all of these people immediately going, oh, so Roy Mustang is a hero. He's on the right side of things. And you know, Mrs. Bradley, even though she's linked to the Fuhrer and might have a vested interest in us knowing this, we don't believe that she's like in on anything. She's a pure victim, and it all went exactly the way that she says. And we don't need to like double check or concern ourselves about any of it other than the fact that there is a coup from other like bad actors happening. And like I said, wistful. So that is, and it's really funny too, the way that this goes, because we have this whole interview and it's like a voiceover of her explaining what's going on. Oh no, I lie. Okay. Somebody says, I've heard her speak before. That's her. All right. I'm sorry. I said that there was no reason for them to believe it was her. I take it back. It is definitely mentioned. I just missed it. So mea culpa. But yeah, I just thought it was really like remarkable how they managed to not only handle Mrs. Bradley and have her be on this interview in a way that's really effective, but also they break the news to her about her husband on the air. And I wasn't sure how they were going to tell her. And for a moment, I was kind of like, why are they doing it this way? And then I stopped and I was like, no, that's actually a really good move. Make it seem like, oh, this just in, and have the shock of it be immediate for her, just like everyone else, so that the threat feels a lot more imminent and real. And plus, the fact that it was a Fuhrer that was attacked fuels the whole idea that somebody is attempting a takeover here. It's not the Fuhrer himself, which I think is very interesting because they're not putting it out there about anything with the homunculi, anything about the Fuhrer is like part of things, or none of that is a factor at all. It is being played as a regular, ordinary power grab. And that's working so far. I was thinking that these like weird mannequins are going to make it out into the street and just start attacking randoms, and that they were going to have to explain to everybody what was going on. It does not appear that they are going to make it to the surface. That said, we've still got another 10 episodes. 11. So it's early days yet, but it seemed like the mannequins were pretty much taken care of in this episode. I'm looking at the chat. Sorry, everybody who's listening. This is Damien. The 1930s and 40s in an alternative timeline. Gotta love the naivete. B. Moore says, I'm sure there are some conspiracy nuts out there that think Roy Mustang is actually behind the coup. Probably. Damien says, this sort of rapid-fire decision-making is why Breda is kept around by Roy. Oh, that didn't occur to me about Breda, but you're right. Poor Breda, whose name I fucking never remember. I'm so sorry, bud. I mean, it's not like you're not useful. You're very key a bunch of times. But your name is just not quite the type that lodges in the brain. And also, you don't do anything like particularly distinct enough as a person. You are, I'm sorry, you know? How am I not going to remember Havoc? First of all, his name is Havoc. Second of all, he fucking does a soliloquy about loving titties. Of course I'm going to remember Havoc. Breda, we need to get you a soliloquy about something. Okay. So, yeah. This, they have this moment where one of the like generals is calling in and saying that, you know, you need to stop this broadcast. And the guy is saying like, oh no, I can't. And then as he's on the phone, he does a whole, no, don't shoot me. Oh my God. And he pretends to get murdered while he's on the phone. And honestly, that shit was gold. I feel like if Roy were here, he would be so delighted, because we've seen how much he likes to play roles here and there, you know? And I feel like he would get a real kick out of this. There's probably a part of him that's like, I wish that I wasn't in charge so that I could do kind of the fun stuff, because he really does like this. Also, there is a moment where Ross is on the air and Brosh recognizes her voice and is like, oh my God. And I was really surprised. I thought for sure that we were going to have a reunion moment where he spots her and is like, oh my God, is that you? And the fact that he recognizes her voice so well, he immediately knows who she is. He's totally confident. He starts crying. I was like, you know, it's not out of the question when you get to know somebody really well, you know their fucking voice. That's fine. But when you really do think somebody's dead and you hear their voice, I think a lot of us would sort of second guess ourselves a little bit. And I have no problem with the fact that he doesn't, but it just really wasn't the way I thought that reveal was going to go. I definitely thought it would be an in-person thing. And I like this better in a way, because even though the drama of it being in person is kind of part of the fun, I also didn't want him to like continue laboring under the delusion that Roy had murdered her for another 5 episodes until he accidentally runs into her. It's a lot more efficient for him to figure out, oh, okay, that wasn't what it looked like now. And then he can be on the side of the good guys, in quotes, because maybe, for the, you know, from here on out. So yeah, that little moment, it was just very surprising, but you know, when I stop and think about it, I'm like, no, that's probably for the best. So this is when we go to Grumman, and he's like, oh, they're being smart using the Fuhrer and what's happened to him as a way to influence everyone. And you're invoking the name of justice. Let's keep our fingers crossed that the public accepts it. And I'm like, look, I don't like you. I would be cool with Grumman getting got. And I'm trying to think which of the homunculi, if we had all of them, if none of them were gone, which one would I want to get Grumman? And I feel like it's gluttony. Because it could be greed. It would work for him because he's like power hungry. But there's something about being eaten by gluttony that's like really lacking in dignity. And that's the part that I like. And I don't like this guy. And that's not to say that he's not like redeemable or anything. He's just taking advantage of a situation in a way that a lot of people either would or would be tempted to. He's not like a bad person necessarily, but he is extremely shady in a way that is so subtle. He could play for a while that he had never intended to take power if it doesn't go his way this time, and bide his time and do it later. There's so much potential for him to wreak havoc eventually if he's allowed to continue sliding by. And that's what makes me worried. When people are outright bad guys and folks are starting to see that, that's less of a threat. Now folks are on their guard. But if you are somebody who has otherwise seemed to be on the right side, and you've convinced people you're not a threat, that's when you're a threat. That's the worst threat. So I'm just saying that he, especially his whole fucking smugness and everything, don't like it. So yeah, anyway, it's Ross when she comes out and Breda's like, hey, that was a nice line about justice. And Ross is like, everyone's willing to fight for justice. So I just said it. And this is when they are like, yeah, we probably should say something to her about her husband and whatnot. So this is when we have the oh my God, I keep wanting to say Shandorans because that is the name of the native people in the One Piece episode that I was just covering. What are the people that are Scar's people? Everybody help me. This is what happens. You start to get things crossed. I kept wanting to call a Mestress, I can't remember it now, but one of the places from Stormlight Archive. But anyway, all of the people on the street who are from that country, Ishvalans, thank you guys. There are a lot of folks listening to this broadcast who are like, wait a minute. The fact that the Fuhrer and they're saying that he's gone, are you sure that they're not actually the ones that are causing the uprising? They're acting like they're not behind it, but what if they are? And these Ishvalans turn up and are like, no, Mustang is telling the truth. We were just in East Amestris and we saw the wreckage of his train. So, yeah, it's true. And one of them says the leader of your country is missing and no one has even informed you yet. And there is something about the implication of just like it being kind of, oh my God, that's so embarrassing for you, that I thought was really effective. Making it seem like somebody is being humiliated by the way they're being treated is, we have seen a pretty effective tactic. And coming from an Ishvalan, for considering how they've been treated, it's kind of like insult to injury for a lot of people, I would think. So yeah, and then everybody's starting to be like, well, what the fuck? If he's been taken out, why wouldn't they tell us unless they're trying to take power? Like, if they're also trying to take out Mrs. Bradley, it feels like it's all part and parcel with the same thing. And then people talk about Salim and they're like, well, I really hope that he's okay. And at one point she says, I haven't seen my son. I have no idea where he is. So everybody is all the more full of like pity and empathy for her, because not only has there been an attempt on her life, but her son is missing, had been probably with his father, and both of them got taken out by these bloodthirsty maniacs who work at the military. And then we get this beautiful moment. There are these guys who are at the gate of the city. I think it's the gate of the city, right? And one of them is saying, we have a transmission from the garrison. And they're being told that there are some Briggs guys that are going to be coming in, and they're breaking down the door to come in. And the captain is like, well, we don't need to worry about that, because if they're going to try and break through our gates, they are going to need a tank to accomplish that. And just as he says this, he pulls out his binoculars, and we see a tank. And I really enjoyed the timing of this, because the timing that one would expect is, of course not, they'd need a tank. And then he lifts his binoculars, and slowly a tank rolls into view, and slowly the tank turns its little thing and points the gun at him. But instead, the tank is already there, and just as he's saying, huh, it turns and fires at him in like one motion. It's really quick, and it was just not what I expected to happen. It was a lot more amped up. And that shell slams into the wall, and the guy just yells, "What the hell?" And then we cut from there to Roy and Hawkeye rescuing Fullmetal and company. And there's a moment here where Hawkeye is just like, we're going to have to shoot these things. And they have to be like, no, sorry, but that won't work. The shootings, they do not help. And we get a great little bit. Fucking Roy. I can't help but think, Hawkeye, about the last time we were here, as I recall. You were crying over me. And she says, because the last thing I'm going to do is start crying for you now. Water makes you useless. That is so cold. Oh my God. I love it so much. It's like, she just like turned it in a direction I was not expecting. When he said that, I was like, I don't know what you say to that. And her response was so biting. Oh, delightful. So yeah, they are like, all right, guys, stop bantering. Let's fucking deal with this. And they begin to, share their tactics. And then Roy is like, huh, okay, if they're homunculi and we can't shoot them, they're not healing themselves. So they don't have the advantage of the other homunculi I've dealt with, but they're definitely not dying. So let's see something. And he does his little snippy snap, and he lights all of these bitches on fire. And it didn't occur to me that because they don't heal themselves, this would be so much more effective. This method of dealing with them never entered my mind, because he had to do it so many times with Lust that I'm over here picturing the same scenario, and that he's going to have to muster the kind of energy he used to kill Lust times 200, or however many of them are in here. And when he just like sends this fire, and it's like looping around everybody, because he's getting only the mannequins. So the mannequins have encircled everyone, and thus the fire encircles everybody in a moment that really made me nervous for a second, because I was like, my God, he didn't give them any warning that he was going to do this. But the fire dies away. All of the mannequins are blackened, and then they just fall apart into ash. And Ed is standing there kind of flipped out. And Roy says they were enemies. It had to be done. So I guess what Ed is flipped out about here is the killing of them when they were like innocent souls. And I'll just refer you back to the previous episode where I was sort of like wondering what it means to have the stone that you're like attached to or powering be destroyed. I would imagine that frees you. Ed doesn't cause a fuss. He doesn't argue or anything in this scene. He just seems really shaken. And I was glad that there wasn't like a back and forth about this, because it's frankly not what we need to be worrying about right now. I think Roy was right. They were the enemies and we had to do something. These guys were like cutting their legs off and shit. I mean, one would argue that might be more suffering. But it did surprise me that Ed didn't seem as relieved as I thought he might. He's mostly upset. And that's fine. I just didn't expect it. So then we go to May, who is running down the hall towards where all the action is, basically, as we find out. I wasn't even really sure where she was going to wind up, but indeed, she is going to come out in the room where everyone's at, in the room where it happens. And Envy is chasing her. And Mei Chang is basically like, okay, well, Envy clearly doesn't want me coming in here, so this means that this is the direction I should be heading. And Mei Chang uses some alchemy to like sort of set a trap, and Envy falls into it, and thus their entrance into the room is a lot more dramatic because there's an explosion behind them as they come in. And Scar calls Mei Chang a damn fool. And she says, why didn't you go back to Xing? And she says, but I thought I just wanted to. And Scar says, forget it. Don't cry. But he doesn't seem to know what she was thinking or intending. He's just more reacting, in my opinion, to like, oh God, I made her cry. All right, forget it, kid. It's fine. But I thought it was interesting that she couldn't even really articulate what she was trying to do, which pretty much brings me back to her motivation doesn't really make any sense. It just doesn't. Her whole purpose was to get Envy here, to contain Envy for the period of time that the show needed him to not be a factor, and then drop Envy into the mix when they wanted Envy to be a factor again. And I just think there was a more elegant way to pull this off. And I just, again, maybe something will happen eventually and I will feel like, okay, here's why Mei Chang matters. But as of right now, I stand by my original assessment and that this was sort of silly. It was really the only part of this show so far that genuinely didn't work for me, which is a pretty good record. We're into 53 episodes here. And so far, I have had very few genuine problems. Any of the issues that I've had mostly seem to be purposeful issues. Except for Hohenheim, who I think is supposed to be more sympathetic than I find him. But, so I'm just saying. I think I was right to be irritated by it, and it doesn't really look like it mattered that much. And it's over now, hopefully. We'll see. But that's that. So Envy here is like, oh my God, humans, you guys whine so much. And then, well, you guys did fuck it up down here pretty good, I gotta say. And it looks like we've got the whole gang. So which one of you is going to be first to die? And I was like, Envy, that is some big talk for somebody who until recently was a tadpole. I don't know what you think about going up against this crew. Will go differently this time? But you've been pretty soundly beaten before, and you only got back into your body by tricking a child and accidentally stumbling across a bunch of mannequins. It was luck. So it's a pretty big talk for somebody who actually doesn't have a lot to back up the fact that they're that tough. Granted, envy can be huge, but like otherwise, whatever. So this is when Roy is like, okay, so you're the one that can change your appearance, huh? And Envy is all, oh, you've heard of me. And tries to sort of instigate things between Scar and Roy, because Envy really believes that, like, if I just point out who Roy is to Scar, he'll be so consumed with rage and bloodlust that I won't even have to worry about anything, because they will they will be at each other's throats, and I can handle these other folks and then take care of them when they're distracted. But Scar is basically like, I know who he is. Yeah, we're like on the same side now. So try a different one. And Roy says, we're not going to be a pawn in your sick games anymore. And Envy says, oh, wow, and what about your sick games? You humans love making other people suffer. That's fucking war, man. That's why you guys are always doing that. There really is nothing quite like watching fools dig their own graves, he says. Especially when that fool is an arrogant homunculus who's too stupid to see what he's doing. And Envy genuinely is like, I don't get it. Being called stupid and a moron, Envy doesn't know how to react. He doesn't even get mad. He's just kind of like, what's that about? I think it's a very rational response, because getting angry that somebody's calling you a fool when you just kind of walked into a situation. I mean, sure, you can get mad just like out of principle, but usually the way to go is to be suspicious, because they're saying that for a reason, and probably the fact that you're puzzled by it means that you're not working with all the info. So Roy says, I want you to tell me who killed Major Hughes, and I want the truth. And Ed turns to Roy in shock, again reminding me that they don't know. Like, it has been so long since his murder that I, for some reason at this point, assumed everybody knew who killed him for sure. And I don't know if they did, and it's just him reminding Ed that it was Envy or what. But Envy is still like totally convinced that Roy murdered Ross, thinking that it was her. And so Envy is just going off at the mouth about how if you thought she did it and then you found out that she didn't, does that mean that you burned a woman to death who was totally innocent? What was it like when you told her family? Did you explain what happened, or did you just sit back stoically and endure their outrage? And just, again, Envy really trying to like poke and prod, but it's really fun to watch when that doesn't work, because Envy is working with wrong info. We have seen Envy be very successful at this. It's not like it doesn't work. We've seen it work. And if somebody does like get to a soft spot like that and really pick at it, and they're right about what they're saying, that can really like stay with you. It's not even that it hurts you in the moment. It will fuck you up and make you think about it for years after. But because Envy is so behind the times and so wrong about all of this, it's really funny, honestly. It's really funny. You're just kind of like, oh my God, just shut up. And that's essentially what Roy says. He's just like, can you please answer the fucking question? I am sick of your shit. All of y'all just give me the runaround whenever I ask for anything and taunt me and do whatever. Who murdered him? Okay? Answer the question and then we will do what we need to do. And Envy is finally like, okay, and turns into Hughes's wife. And it really took a moment, guys, because Envy transforms and everybody has this extremely strong reaction, but I didn't recognize what Envy was doing right away. So I was like, what are you why is everybody reacting like this? And yes, it turns out that everybody just knows what Hughes's wife looks like. So when Envy turns into his wife, apparently immediately they realize what it is that Envy probably did in order to accomplish the murder. But I didn't recognize who Envy had turned into. And then I had a moment of like, but would they know who this is? And I had to be like, okay, I guess they would. I don't think Scar would, but it doesn't matter. Like pretty much everybody else here seems to know immediately. And Envy is like, oh, the look on your face is exactly the look on Hughes's face when I shot him. The utter confusion. You could see every emotion he felt as his own wife shot him, and it was great. And Roy says, that's enough. You were stupid enough to confess, and even more stupid to boast. Everything you've said is fuel on your funeral pyre. So then I think I'll begin by burning out your tongue. And he does. A lot. Many times, repeatedly, over and over again. Burns out Envy's eyeballs. Like, there's a lot of individual body part burnings. And he sends everybody except Hawkeye out. And is like, this one is mine and mine alone. And the Chimera are immediately like, oh no, that's fine. Yeah, we'll take off. It's Ed that's sort of like, I don't really feel great about this. And I wasn't really sure what Ed's holdup was. But it seems when he's talking to Scar later that Ed's concern is Roy is too distracted by his desire for vengeance. And Ed thinks Roy is going to make a mistake or let his like rage get the best of him in this situation because he's just so angry at Envy that he's either going to let himself be hurt or he's going to like go too far somehow. I don't really know what that would even look like with Envy because like genuinely, how do you go too far with one of these things? You know, I don't know. But Ed seems more concerned than I am. I'm like, I just really did not consider it to be something to worry about. Let's see. Sorry, there's chat, guys. Roy and Ed certainly know Gracia. The others are probably more like, oh, this guy is just going off the deep end. B. Moore says she's almost unrecognizable just because of the sadistic facial expression. Great job on the animation here. Yeah, I honestly, even without the facial expression, though, I don't think I would recognize her because she's sort of whatever looking. She's got a really generic kind of look. And that's fine. It's, you know, she's not like hugely important, so it doesn't matter. But the facial expression, I don't think was it for me. I just don't think I really remember what she looks like particularly well. So we have this wonderful moment where Envy keeps the Chimera from leaving by throwing his arm out and transforming his arm into the giant, like, monster arm in order to really create a barrier that they can't get past. And again, Envy is so assured. I didn't say that you could leave. I don't recall allowing this. And Envy is in the middle of this, again, another monologue. And all of a sudden gets hit with a shot from Roy. Steam is coming out of his mouth. And he collapses to his knees. And Roy says, keep your eyes on me, Envy. Our conversation is the only one that should concern you. And then, when Envy transforms back into himself, we see that his tongue was destroyed exactly how he said he would do it. I thought it was going to be a metaphor. It is not. It is quite literal. And Roy is like, isn't it really wild how quick that happens? And it's just, that's how tongues be. And that, I think, is the moment where Ed starts to be like, huh. Okay. I mean, you could just kill. You don't have to. Well, And like, okay. But I just was not particularly bothered by it because Envy's whole deal is trying to hurt people in specific ways. And just going after Envy in particularly hurtful ways, it does not faze me one bit. Honestly, there are so many deaths of bad guys that I feel are way too easy. And Envy getting like toyed with in this way, I'm fine with it. Especially considering that Envy just self-heals on everything. It's not even permanent damage. So these are beings that experience all kinds of injuries all the time and always recover. You know, the only time that they don't is when they're so completely overwhelmed that their stone gets like messed up. But otherwise, they experience a lot of injury and they just bounce back from it and it's no problem. So inflicting injury after injury like this doesn't even feel like a particularly big deal to me because that's just how they fight anyway. It's like, yeah, you're targeting particular body parts that are more sensitive and more like, and sure, but it just doesn't really faze me very much because it's none of it actually results in like permanent damage or even multiple minutes of damage. Envy's tongue gets burned out and he's stepping up to his feet with his tongue half grown back 3 seconds later. It's totally like, it's really just nothing. I just don't care. I just don't. I'll say it. If this was any other character, it would be very different. And when I say any other character, I mean human character, obviously, not a homunculi. But I think it's about time that Envy be given a taste of his own medicine. Because that has been Envy's entire MO, is just going after people's soft spots and really digging at them, enjoying causing pain. And it's just, that's what you fucking get. That's what you get. So Envy transforms into monster form in a moment that, because this comes right after Ed saying that's not what I'm worried about, I thought this was what Ed meant, which was they aren't aware how big Envy can get. So I am concerned that maybe they're not as prepared as they thought they were when they sent us all out of the room. Instead, Envy transforms and is grinning down at them once again, completely certain I am about to fuck your life up. And Roy just zaps Envy right in the fucking eyeballs yet again. And this is when he says, what's it like having the fluid inside of your eyes boil? I imagine it must sting a little. Cold-blooded. And then he fucking lights Envy's ass up and is like, I can't believe you'd give me a bigger target. Do you really think that getting bigger would just make you win? Get the fuck up, regenerate, and get up. And then says, you'll suffer 1,000 deaths before I'm done. And all of a sudden, Envy's like, oh my God, he's the one who killed Lust. I forgot. How did I forget that? And Envy runs. Beautiful. I love it. Envy just fucking sprints away and is like, you know what? I'm good. And that cracked me up so bad. It's not even like Envy doesn't even try to sort of save face and create a scenario where it's like, oh, I'm presenting it as if I'm leading you somewhere or taunting you. It's just sheer I'm trying to escape and I'm going to fucking make no bones about it. And Roy pursues, leaving Hawkeye behind. And Hawkeye watches him go. And at the end of the episode, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, she finds Roy, and Roy says, I want you right by my side. And Hawkeye is following Roy, but then she stops and pulls her gun. And I'm so glad, because I 100% thought that Roy was Envy. And we don't actually see anything happen past that point. The episode ends when Hawkeye lifts her gun. But I think Hawkeye's instincts were completely correct here. Roy wasn't acting right. That didn't feel like Roy to me either. And I think that her suspicion is correct, and I am very interested to see whether or not she turns out to be right. But that happens later. So we go back to all of our guys who are like in the hallway heading towards the center of everything. And one of them says that these tubes are all like veins. And the further in, the more it's like I've got a bad case of heartburn. And Mei Chang says, I feel it too. There's a strong mass of rancid chi ahead. And I will tell you, I really did think she said cheese. And I had a real confused moment. I was like, rancid cheese? Wait, is that something? Wait. And then I rewound it and realized what she said. And I was like, oh, that makes more sense. But yeah, the guys are like, I don't know what it is, but I can definitely feel it, and it is unpleasant. So this is when we have that moment with Scar and Ed, and Scar is like, so the Flame Alchemist, you're worried about him just like wanting vengeance really bad, and that maybe he's acting like a monster. And it wasn't too long ago that I was also doing that. So if he lets that hatred keep burning, he'll destroy himself with it, and he might not ever recover. And all of a sudden we hear like the sound of the flames, and there's a light coming from behind them, and Ed turns around, and they both have a moment of sort of it's like Ed is deciding, do I want to turn back? Do I want to disobey an order and head over there? So Envy goes flying, because when that bloom of light appears, we immediately like jump over to its location, and we just see Envy like as this tiny stick figure in this absolute cloud of fire just flying through the air. Honestly, that shit was really funny. I just find Envy's torment hilarious, because Envy has been so certain this whole time. And this is when Envy turns into Hughes, and Roy turns around, sees Hughes, gets this look, and Envy says, stupid human, he won't kill his friend. And Roy just attacks anyway, and Envy is like, what the fuck? Envy literally says, what's wrong with you? Envy is asking, what's wrong with you, Envy? You didn't even hesitate to incinerate your best friend. And Roy says Maze Hughes is dead. That's a fact. And you invoke his image? You must be a glutton for punishment. And 100% agree. Look, apparently I'm vengeful. Oh well. I think I pretty much knew that about myself. So then we get some wild animation of Envy coming at him there's so much raggedness about the way this is drawn. It's almost like a pencil sketch or using like craypa or pastel, where you get the really just uneven edges and a lot of dark like circles and smudges. Like Envy is covered in soot or still forming back to like full body. And again, Envy collapses. My eyes, they're gone. And Roy says, I'm curious, were you trying to get close so that I wouldn't use heavy fire? Did no one tell you I can do pinpoint aiming? That's too bad for you, because I can. And then he launches on Envy another time. And we see Hawkeye out in the main room saying, I know you told me to wait, Colonel, but I'm not gonna anymore. And we go back to him watching Envy. Envy leaps off of this sort of like edge of what almost looks like an elevator shaft and goes plummeting down into it. And Roy just says, you're not getting away. And then we cut right to Hawkeye. And we see Envy. Oh, do you know what? I'm realizing that maybe it's supposed to be telegraphed that this isn't Roy. Because like we see Envy watching Hawkeye and getting this, maniacal grin that Envy is so good at. But it looks more to me like the way that they're framing it is supposed to be that moment turns into Envy becoming Hawkeye and trying to jump Hawkeye. I don't know. I can't decide which way I'm supposed to think, but I'm curious how you guys all took this the first time. When Roy comes up to Hawkeye in the hall finally, he says, I thought I told you to stay behind. And she says, I'm sorry, but I couldn't just sit there, sir. And he says, Envy outran me. This place is like a labyrinth. You may as well help me kill him now you're here. Stay right by my side, Lieutenant. And that's when he walks away. And we see Hawkeye's face sort of like her brow furrows. And she walks up and lifts the gun. And you hear the like click. And Roy turns around. And Hawkeye gets a grin. A little bit of one. And it could be that Hawkeye is supposed to be Envy. But I don't see... I guess it may be if Envy had taken down Hawkeye when Hawkeye first walked in and then stolen Hawkeye's gun. The gun is the sticking point for me. Envy can't just make a gun appear. Can he? Like, I don't know. Envy can imitate clothing. So I'm not sure. Maybe Envy can make weapons appear if somebody was wearing the weapon. I'm actually not certain how that would work. But I interpreted this as Roy was the one Envy was imitating and Hawkeye was really Hawkeye. And now I'm like, well, maybe it's supposed to be Hawkeye that's Envy. And Envy took the gun. And that was why Envy got that like grin, because he was thinking, oh, perfect, she's all by herself. I'll take her out and take her weapon. I don't know. Damien says, Roy's attacks are really, really sadistic towards Envy in a way that's borderline cruel for his character as seen up until this point. As the audience, it's definitely satisfying to see Envy get his comeuppance at this point, but for people in the show, I can see their concerns. That's an interesting point, Damien, that maybe they were like, all right, we're going to like really fuck Envy up, but we're going to make it kind of problematic and address that. I could see that. Travis, who plays Roy, and Wendy, who plays Envy, were in peak form this episode. Their acting is glorious. And B. Moore says, this is why shape changing should be illegal. This is one of those things that I always say. I used to want so bad, if I were going to have like a superpower, this is the one I used to want. Shape changing. Just the idea of being able to be like any person, I thought would be so fun, because there's certain outfits that just work better with certain either body shapes or hairstyles or skin tones or anything. And I always was like, God, wouldn't it be so cool if I could just have a blonde mohawk for one day to go with this like particular outfit, you know? But then I got older and I had to drive places, fly places. And that was when I really got converted to teleportation. And I was like, no, that's the one. If I want a superpower, that's the one. For my major power, teleportation. For my minor power, my clothes never get stained. That would be my minor power. My clothes can't stain, because that is like the bane of my existence. I stain everything I own. It's really remarkable. So anyway, those are my picks. So to the genie that I will eventually meet who will grant me these powers, you have my notes. All right, everybody, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you again, all of you, so much for hanging out with me. Thank you again to Max for commissioning this episode. Appreciate you a lot. Hope you guys are enjoying the coverage. And I will be seeing you on Friday. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.